Yes, thank you. So a couple of things. Chris noted that I'm a photographer, and I think the danger of inviting a photographer to give a program will become immediately obvious. And let's see, how many people in our audience here are already familiar with flower flies? You can just use your raise your hand to indicate. Oh, well, okay, you could do it that way too. I just meant, the reactions in the tray is another way, but raising your hand physically is also working. Okay, so a lot of people are already familiar with flower flies. And we started screen sharing. Okay. Uh, okay. Are we screen sharing? Me? I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
We can see your screen, but your PowerPoint or photos are not displaying. We just see your launch
Okay.
meeting.
Do you see a big blue screen right now?
No.
That's too bad. Okay. I didn't get a button to share. That's why I was a little
We
bit.
can see your launch meeting, where you're trying to launch into Zoom.
Okay.
So we can see a screen. Do you have more than one display?
No.
Huh.
Bruce, I would say open what you want on your computer before you start your screen share and then screen share. Have it open
Okay.
before you screen share.
Okay. I think I found the screen share button. Okay, good. All right. Yes. Someone else is sharing. Okay.
On my screen, it says you are viewing Sandy Weber's screen.
Right. That's what I've got too.
Aha.
So Sandy needs to unshare.
Yeah, stop sharing, Sandy.
And then you can use the share as long as you've been enabled.
Okay. How about now?
Nope.
Okay. I sent a request, so I don't know. Maybe my request didn't get honored somehow.
They said, no way. Oh. It says she started sharing. Is Sandy on the call still?
She is.
Oh.
Okay.
Has someone made Bruce a co-host? Because unless you make him a co-host, whoever is leading the Zoom, he cannot share.
That's Jennifer. I didn't make him a co-host, but I allowed him to share.
Yeah, you can allow anybody to share. They don't have to be a co-host.
Right.
Right. So he has been allowed. Okay.
Did you click the green share button?
I did, yes.
Oh, we're seeing something.
I'll click it the third time. Third time the charm.
And there's a little button to the right that says share.
Yes, I clicked it 3 times, and this time maybe it's working.
Well,
okay, you seeing a
Nope.
No? Okay.
Sorry.
It's saying Zoom would like to record this computer screen and audio, so you're going to have to give access. Because you're sharing, so it's asking you if it can record your stuff.
I never had to do that. Okay. There we go. Bruce, you're almost there.
There yay! Woo! Okay. All right. So yeah, the blank screen is the start. Okay. Sorry. So I thought I'd show you a few of the books that I have found interesting and useful. This book by Stephen Marshall, is just a general natural history of insects globally. Although the photographic guide is to Eastern North America, and he's a professor in Canada, but he actually taught at Mountain Lake, and a lot of the photos are from our region. And it's an amazing, 12-pound book, and everyone should have one on their coffee table. He put out another one, and this is just on flies, and you might note that the two cover flies are in fact flower flies. And this is the field guide that came out a few years ago. I had already been kind of interested in flower flies and was using bug guide on the internet to identify things. But when this book came out, I took it to the next level and started, trying to actively do identifications myself. And notice that Stephen Marshall is still present on this credit. But amazing photos and a great helpful book for identifying flower flies. So we're talking about the flower flies and why they're important, and noting that bees don't do all the heavy lifting. The bees do, probably 60% of insect pollination, but the flies, not just flower flies, but all flies, contribute another 30+% of pollination services, it's estimated. So, and flower flies are the most important of the flies in the pollination services. So I find them beautiful. You may or may not find them beautiful, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But we'll see a few. Okay, so as master naturalist, I'm sure we're all aware that flies are in order in class Insecta, and that diptera means two wings, and that's what differentiates the flies from the other insects. And the second pair of wings are replaced with small clubs that provide orientation of the fly as it's flying. So yeah, okay, and about a third of insect pollination services. Okay. The flower flies are a family in the order, and there are 4 subfamilies. So we're going to look at them tonight in each of the subfamilies. And just so you know, another name for the group is hoverflies. A lot of people use that. Some of us have the habit of referring to them also as syrphids. And so just warning you that I may slip and use any of these terms. They all mean the same thing. A flower fly is a hoverfly is a syrphid. So if we look at the first group, it's not a very large group, and I have not got very many encounters with these, total 4 encounters. And but it's an interesting group in that the larval foods of this group are ant eggs or larvae. Now, I don't know if any of you have disturbed an ant colony, but ants are kind of, picky about who gets in and tend to attack and kill and eat anything that's trying to get in there if they can do it. They're very defensive. So the larva of these flies is actually down there in the ant colony eating eggs and larvae. And the way it does that is by secreting pheromones that convince the ants that they actually belong there. So as you can imagine, you have to be rather specific about which ants' eggs and larvae you're going for, because if you send the wrong pheromone signal, you're just more food. So this is a microdon species ant fly. I got this on the Parkway project. I'll talk about that in a little bit, because this is when I really got going heavily with them. Fred Umberger and I volunteered for a Blue Ridge Parkway study of ant flies, and we were catching at six different locations there for 2 years and submitting them to help the Parkway determine which species were present. And it was a fun project, and we spent a lot of hours up there. Okay, so on this fly, you notice, like most flower flies, it resembles a bee or a wasp. They don't have any defenses of their own. So to get rid of predators, they have appearance that makes them look dangerous. You can see this species even has these long antennae, unlike most flies. But it's definitely a fly antenna. It has this little hair coming off of each of the last segment. That's called an arista. And it's a rather long hair-like structure there on this one. Also, you can see here the halter there, and just the one pair of wings, and that's the little thing that's on all the flies. The halter is on all the flies to help it orient as it flies and changes directions. So this is another species that we don't know which one it is. I don't know which genus it is even. But it's another one I encountered down in the Mount Rogers area. And this is another that I encountered in the Mount Rogers area, which may or may not be the same species as the preceding one. This one we were able to identify. This is a little bit larger. The other ones are, the typical, a little bit smaller ones. This is one of the larger of the ant flies. It's a bumblebee mimic, as you can see. And the larvae of this black-bodied ant fly are known to eat a couple of different ant species, eggs and larvae. So they've got the pheromones right and they know which species they are for this one. So that's it on the ant flies, the only ones I have. We go to the next group, the Aristolini. There's a lot more of these, 226 identified species in Northeast North America and 49 different genera. So the larvae of these live in sap trails under the bark, in decaying organic matters like dung or compost in shallow aquatic environments, because the larvae feed on decaying organic debris in aquatic media, generally. And they purify water. So that's another useful product that they give as larvae to the rest of animal life on the planet. They're water purifying animals. So here's one example. This is Halophilus fasciatus, the narrow-headed marsh fly. And it gives you an idea of kind of the general look of a lot of the flower flies. It's kind of vaguely, on the smaller ones, they're vaguely bee or wasp, predator looking or dangerous looking at least. And this one has nice markings on the back. This section is called the scutum. The little bump behind it's called the scutellum, and then of course the abdomen. And the markings, different bands and things there. This one's easily identified to species because the little antenna, and you can see the antenna are quite different on this. Is much more typical of flies. And in this particular species, the antenna are red. And that's how we tell which one it is from the other. So that's just some of the little helpful things you need to be watching out for if you're trying to do IDs. This is the lump-legged swamp fly. You can see the thighs, thighs on the hind legs are rather enlarged, so that's how it gets the lump-legged name. But it has a much thinner and longer abdomen, so it looks quite a bit different. This one was in my neighborhood back in 2018, and this one's about 4/10 of an inch in length. Most of the ones we're looking at are going to be, anywhere from less than a quarter inch up to nearly an inch. But the majority are going to be in that somewhere around a half inch. So this is 4/10 of an inch in length. This is at the pollinator garden at Pandapus. So thank you, folks working on that. You helped bring in a lot of good, interesting insects. This one's about 4/10 of an inch in length. This one is somewhere in that same range, up to just over a half inch. And you can see it very much resembles a bee. This is the the Narcissus bulb fly is the larvae feed on bulbs, and it's not actually native to North America. So it was brought in undoubtedly with some bulbs that somebody wanted to plant. So it can be a minor pest on some species of bulb flowers. This catkin fly, it's again a third of an inch to over half an inch, and it's sitting on a daffodil petal in my study area in Craig County. Chris and I noticed this fly at Chincoteague last fall when we were on a VSO trip, and it was near the beach in a wet area. And these are actually non-native, but they're very important. They're found in seeps and brackish water and in sewage ponds, and as larvae, that is. And the larvae are major contributors to cleaning up sewage, what would otherwise be dangerous bacterial stuff in the sewage. This one you can see very much looks like the Mulata posticata, the hairy-eyed mimic, and you can see on the eyes little golden hairs there, and that's how we know this species from the other one in the same genus. That's the bare-eyed mimic, but they're very much bumblebee mimics, and it's a bit larger. It's up to about 3/4 of an inch. I saw it sitting on a leaf out at my study area, and I thought when I went over to it to take its picture that it was a robber fly, because I frequently find the bumblebee mimic robber fly sitting in the posture like this, but this was the flower fly instead.
Bruce, do we know why they mimic other insects?
Absolutely. If you look dangerous, things are much less likely to come over and try and eat you. So it's strictly defensive. That kind of mimicry, the Batesian mimicry, is really important for flower flies. And so if you look like you shouldn't be messed with, all these predators are just going to leave you alone. The little ones in these flower flies tend to look kind of generic for a bee or wasp. As we get larger, the larger species tend to look much more like either a bumblebee or a wasp, and they can look, we'll see later, can look very specifically like bees and like wasps or bees. But this one, the swiftwing here, it's a good bumblebee mimic. It can be up to 7/10 of an inch. So it's one of the larger ones, and it's really a good mimic. And the larvae of this species are actually found in the nest of bees and wasps. They feed on the pollen, comb material, and the larvae and pupa of the bees and wasps that they're in the nest of. And you may notice also this one has kind of an elongated face, which looks very bee-like. It also has the arista, the little hairs that come off the antennae. I don't know if you can see, but there's little filaments coming off of the hair. It's a long hair. The arista is long, but it's also got these little filaments coming off of it. So this is called a plumose arista. This like a little feather. And this is the only genus where that I'm aware of in the flower flies that do have the plumose aristas. So this is the same insect. I want you to know something, though. It noticed that there was a large predator, namely me, looking at it. And so it reared back and started waving its legs around a little bit, like it had bee antennae instead of little fly antennae. So they actually also mimic actions to make themselves sell the mimicry better. Okay, there are a lot of Aristilus species, and they're pretty common. So I included several here. because you're likely to see these in the gardens. They're among the most common of our garden visitors. You can see this one has multi colors on the scutum here, the top of the back, and a bright yellow scutellum, and has these stripes as well as the little other markings here on the abdomen. So that's the transverse banded. And this is the common dronefly. Now, this is a honeybee mimic, which gives you an idea that it's not from around here. It's comes from Europe, but it's absolutely everywhere now. So it's it's just like honeybees; they're everywhere, and they're all of these are in the around a ½ inch in size. This is the black-shouldered dronefly. It's different coloration. You can see it's darkened at the base of the wings, and it's got these little white lines. So it's not really very hard to identify. When we go to Eastern Shore in the fall, they're just on everything there, all the flowers. Another one that's not native, the European dronefly, kind of gives it away. Oh, I should add that I'm giving you the common names of all these. Most of them didn't really have common names, but if you're going to come out with a field guide, the editors of the field guide make you come up with common names. So now they all have common names. So that makes it easier for us, I suppose. Now, this is an interesting one because we were on a trip down to Patrick County near Ferrystone State Park, and this was on a flower there. Those little black areas on the back are actually, they help to channel the pollen, I'm told. And so that's an important thing, to notice about the, morphologically about all of these guys. They're designed to be working around the flowers and collecting pollen and spreading the pollen. So that's why they're such important pollinators. This one's probably not the guidebook authors think this is an undescribed species, and the actual tropical ones don't get into the United States at all. But because it looks identical and nobody's gone to the trouble of doing the DNA and other work, it's still called the tropical plushback. Another of the same genus, this is one we found out on Eastern Shore. And again, it's got the multicolored scutum and a bright scutellum, and then lots of white on the abdomen. Rather attractive. And they're about the same size as all these others. This, on the other hand, is one of the big guys. So this is our largest flower fly, and a lot of you are probably familiar with it because it's, I'm sure, the best known of all the flower flies around here. The Virginia giant is the name they gave it. It's a mimic of the southern yellow jacket, and it buzzes really loudly and will fly around your head and convince you you're about to die from a yellow jacket attack, until you realize it's just a flower fly and it's not capable of bothering you whatsoever. And I'd heard it called the news bee because of that loud buzzing, and also the good news bee because it can't give you any bad news, except that I just heard from somebody last week that if they land, that's considered bad news. So the buzzing is good news, but when they land, apparently it's bad news. So that was new information for me too. This was at Pandapus. So keep your eyes out there. They're pretty common out there. This is not a flower fly. This is a bald-faced hornet, but I want you to notice a few things about it. First, look at the black and white patterning on it, and the fact that the head has white, and then the eyes in front black, but and the other head parts black, but the rear of the head is white. But when we look at the bald-faced hornet fly, which is another very specific mimic, one of the large guys and a very specific mimic, and this one's 6 to 7/10 of an inch in length. It just has various things. The colorations are very, very similar, and even this is all eye, but it's patterned to make it look like the head of the hornet itself. This one, Chris tells me, is pretty common in her garden. She sees them. Sorry.
Could you flip back and forth to the bald-faced hornet and the hornet fly once
Absolutely.
again, please?
So there's the hornet fly, and here's the hornet. Unfortunately, I'm above on the hornet and from the side on the fly, so it's hard to see how perfect a mimic it is, but it's a pretty incredibly.
Yeah, the antenna are totally different.
The antenna, yes, because it's a fly.
And the eyes are totally different.
Well, the eyes are different, but the eye patterning is trying to make it look like the head of the hornet. Let's look at that again. See how the back of the head is white there. So the eye here has that big white band so that it will look like the hornet.
Thanks.
So yeah, no problem. So this is another really good, wasp mimic here, and it's got incredible eye patterning on it as well. But again, those antennae aren't fooling anybody, although the antenna looks a little bit larger because it's got a large base that the antenna come off of. This is an interesting one. This was out of my study area, and it's considered kind of rare. The yellow-spotted false-horn, 4/10 to 6/10 of an inch. Note that it's holding its legs up, and that the upper part of the leg is yellow, and the lower part of the leg is black. So it does look like antennae. It's trying to convince you it's got those big wasp antennae there.
That's hilarious.
And the larvae of this are wood borers and rotting stumps and logs. The spotted wood fly is a mimic of the scoliid wasps, and the larvae live in decaying wood also. This picture was taken down at the Blue Ridge Discovery Center. They have the pond up near their center, the center itself, not the one across the road. And there were a bunch of them flying around there.
So that's pollen on its back?
Yeah, that is pollen. Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can see that, it's hard to note that there are a lot of hairs on it, but many of these have very small hairs all over them to help pollen collection. This is another one that's a good wasp mimic. This was even acting like a wasp. I was convinced it was a wasp until I could get a good look at it and see the antennae, and we're obviously not a wasp. But it's very uncommon. This was up in my study area, but it was even acting like a wasp, crawling around like it was hunting prey and going under leaves. So I have no idea what it was actually doing. I'm not sure if anybody else does either, but it was, it was selling itself pretty well as a wasp. These are also considered uncommon. This is smaller. This is like 1/3 of an inch to 4/10 of an inch. They live in the forest. Usually they're found sitting on leaves or logs or going up to the top of a hill to find others. That's a mating strategy for a lot of the insects, is to go to high spot and find others of their same species to interact with. And larvae for this occur in sap runs and under bark. This one we found on the parkway, and they were very glad we did, because I think it was the only one found up there. Not too much is known about this genus, and it's also considered rare. And so it's about a ½ inch long, but we were able to figure out what it was from the photo, because although we were supposed to be catching them, I was taking pictures too often and not catching them. But our supervisor was not too unhappy that at least we got the picture. This is a more common fly, the common compost fly, just from the name. It sounds like it's introduced, but it's now naturalized and widespread. And they eat from a wide range of flowers, and the larvae feed on decaying plant matter like compost, silage, and manure. Okay, these are pretty small. These are 1/4 inch to 1/3 of an inch. And you can notice something about it. It's got a very, what they call, produced face here. It sticks way out in front of the eyes, and very long mouth parts, extendable. And I frequently find them at the jewelweed. And I think this one is up on White Top Mountain, but I also got it at Falls Ridge on the jewelweed. So, but I'm pretty sure this is the White Top Mountain. I also got it in my backyard on yellow jewelweed. So, wherever you find it, you may find the snout fly. This one was at Falls Ridge. This is the only one of this genus that I've ever encountered, and this is the only picture I got of the only one I ever encountered. And it was down by the parking lot next to the creek, on the edge of the woods there. And they're not very big, for a 1/4 inch, to up to maybe 4/10 of an inch for the bigger ones. But the habitat description says they like humid forest with running waters, and so that's exactly where it was. And the larvae for this live under wet bark or in sap runs. This is everybody's favorite, I guess, the wavy mucksucker, just because, who doesn't want to say wavy mucksucker? So it's considered wetland associated, although this particular one was on a small wildflower plot on the Blue Ridge Parkway that didn't have water near. But the other ones I've seen have all been at water areas. Almost all the members of this genus have the eye patterning, but this one has the most distinctive, and eye patterning is really easily identified from that. But the whole thing looks bejeweled. They're really beautiful. And I should mention, they're also about 2/10 of an inch, so you have to be looking pretty close to find them. Blacklets. So this is the only photo I have of a blacklet. This was on the Parkway project, and I had set my net down to go back to the car and grab a sandwich, and naturally that's when the only one I've ever seen shows up, and I did not capture it, so I caught hell for that. But the larvae are on or in living plant tissue, and even a few on mushrooms, so they're a little bit different from some of the others. And they can apparently be abundant, although you can't prove it by me, because like I said, this is the only one. And they range from about a 1/4 inch to about a 1/2 inch. Okay, so we've gone through a couple of the subfamilies. Now we're getting to the Pipsini. I have one encounter total. The known larval foods for this subfamily are mostly gall-making or leaf-curling aphids, adelgids, or psyllids. So they're very helpful in that they're getting rid of plant pests. So they can be really important, to other animals because they're helping to keep plants alive. So this is the one I met on the parkway. Again, I was on my way to get lunch. I didn't do that all the time, but I didn't have my net with me again, so I didn't get to capture this one. You can see it sitting on a blade of a grass that is glistening, and it's glistening because we sprayed it with honeydew, artificial honeydew, in hopes of attracting the flower flies to it. And this was up there enjoying it. And I did get a picture, and I managed a side picture as well. But yeah, that's what I got, and that's all we get. So we don't know what genus or species it is. This is the only one from this whole subfamily that I got an encounter with. Okay, so the final subfamily are the Surfini, and this is really another really big subfamily. And the larvae of this subfamily are aphid predators. Some are generalist, others will just eat a few species of aphids. And the adults, well, they have certain preferences in their native plants. So you can see some of the families there that are favored by the Surfini. So here's a Surfini species, and out finding a good home for the kids, someplace where they'll have plenty of food. These are some pictures of, so this is a genus of Surfini, the Eupioides. So Susie Leslie goes out on her, her deck or porch and finds, with all her plants there, she gets aphids on them, and then right away the larvae show up and start chowing down. You can actually see, if you look carefully, that it's got the larva has an aphid in its mouth, and this one also has got one here. So they're pretty efficient, and in Great Britain, where they actually study instead of what to spray, they were studying the actual effects of these insects, larvae, what beneficial effects they have on the crops there. And they quantified it. It was, hundreds of millions of dollars that they were providing in plant protection services. So we're going to start here with these guys. I'm going in taxonomic order from the book. So this Grasshopper is the only member of its subgenus, the genus being Paragus. But this one is identifiable because if you look, it's not always red back here. It gets easier when they are. But if you look at the scutellum here, you don't see any other colors, just dark. So we know which one this is. And these are really tiny guys. I mean, these are, the big ones are not quite a quarter inch in length. And this was at Pandapus. This was on the Parkway, and this is the only encounter I have with the other subgenus, which is the nominate Paragus. But you can see how it differs in that on the back of the scutellum here, it's yellow. And that's how we know. And plus it's got hairy eyeballs. So between those two things, we know that it's this other, it's in that genus, but it's one of the other species, and you have to dissect it to be able to ID it. Okay, we're going to look at this this one a little bit more in length because there are a couple other factors. This is a female. So how do we know this? Well, we figure out which species it is, and we see that it's got kind of triangular markings here on the abdomen. And the males in this species have rectangular markings. But also, this is something that's in many of the species, even most of the species in the flower flies, the females have separated eyes. The head structure, there's a lot of separation between the eyes. And also, I guess, would make it even easier, this one's loaded up with eggs. That's why the abdomen is so swollen here. So we know it's a female. And if we look at the male, we see that it's nice and svelte, no eggs. It's got rectangular markings, and the eyes you can see here are abutting. So here's a nice male of the eastern forest sedge sitter. This is down at Mill Mountain, hanging out, and you can see the pollen on it, all this yellow pollen on it. I have an apology to make on this one. The wind was blowing about 25, 30 miles an hour, and the bush was blowing in the wind, and the insect was blowing in the wind, and I was blowing in the wind. And this is the only picture. So it's pretty rotten. But because it's got this yellow mark here and these marks here, we know which one it is. But you notice how it's completely different shaped. It's got this really thin portion of the abdomen and then widens out again. And so there are a lot of these that have different body shapes. So this is the band-winged hoverfly, and it's got these bands in the wing, naturally, and a very elongated abdomen. And these are, a third to a half inch or so. The cobalt hoverfly is a forest fly. So we were on the parkway. We found a lot of these, and in several areas. And the larvae like to eat arboreal scale insects and possibly aphids as well. And they're, again, a third to almost a half inch. But you can see the very distinctive, first is the coloration, and then there's the dark bands across the top of the wings. Okay, so when Fred and I were doing this study there, we were collecting everything that we found up there that we could get in the net. And after the first year, they sent out word to all of the collectors up and down the parkway. It was master naturalists in Virginia, some master naturalists, but generally biology students at Appalachian State in North Carolina. But they told all of us to quit collecting Toxomeris geminatus, this species, the eastern calligrapher, and the next one, the Toxomeris marginatus, the margin calligrapher, because they were ubiquitous. They're everywhere. You will see them here. They are everywhere, and they're not very big. So a quarter inch, less than a quarter inch on the previous this one, and on the previous one, it might be a little larger than a quarter inch, but they're not big. But they're very well marked, so they're easy to spot and identify once you get used to them. Although this one can be really variable. Allegrapta obliqua, the oblique striped tail, has really distinctive markings on this part and of the abdomen. So it's pretty easy to ID. I mean, there are other things you look for, but that's so distinctive, and so that's, you know, you can find identify pretty easily. Okay, this is the tufted globetail, and it's a male. And how do we know? Well, the eyes are abutting here. Also, the markings on the abdomen are quite different. But when we look here, we at a mating pair, you can see the male is above and it has that different pattern. The female, you can see, is larger, but also has much more distinct black bands, black markings. And how did they get the name globetail? Well, because they have this globose genitalia on the males at the apex of the abdomen. And all of this genus, there are other species, not that I've been able to find here, but they all have the globose genitalia. And so they get the name for the genus. This little guy was, we were doing a butterfly walk out at the big Leatris patch out on Craig Creek with the Roanoke wildflower folks. And I had to absent myself from the group for a while this was flying around. They stay really low in the grass, and I was trying to get pictures. And so this is the best picture that I was able to get. But it's pretty interesting. And once you figure out that these little brown markings are between the yellow marks embedded in the black there, it's very easy to ID. But this is the only one I've ever seen. So it's not supposed to be uncommon. I mean, I guess it's a bit uncommon, but it's not supposed to be never found. This is one that the name in the book, so they have changed the common name since the book came out. This was called the transverse conifer fly in the book, and it's a forest dweller, and I found it down in the Mount Rogers area, so, you know, likes those conifers down there, I reckon. I haven't seen any here. This, on the other hand, was in my neighborhood, so it's uncommon in the east, although apparently less, you know, more common out west. And it's you know, up to about 4/10 of an inch in length, and the larvae eat aphids and caterpillars. Some members of this genus are migratory in Europe, and so that's one of this genus was studied by those British researchers for their importance in agriculture. This is one of our most common species. You can find this everywhere. And when I say species, I'm not sure which of the two species it is. It's either the long-tailed or the short-tailed aphid eater. This is a female. Apparently, you have to do DNA tests to figure out which species it was. You can tell the males apart, but only if you dissect them. So we don't try to do field ID. We just say it's one or the other. I just want to show you, sometimes you get a whole group. These are all one species. There were on the thistle on Whitetop Mountain, the Blackhorn smoothtails, and they're very common. They visit a large variety of flowering plants. Larvae are aphid feeders, and they're average about a ½ inch in length, so they're not as small as some of the others. This genus are very common, and the yellow-legged is probably the most common of the ones we get around here. And they fly a long flight period, April to mid-November. The larvae feed on aphids, and they're up again, the same size, up to about 4/10 of an inch. And finally, the broad-banded meadow fly. It's got, in this genus, you notice the long antennae again. So we're back to the longer antennae to help sell that idea of being a bee. And this is the only one I've encountered. This was at my study area in Craig County. So that field guide that I showed you at the beginning, that's the information on it. But I've also used iNaturalist to help get identifications, and there's several people on there who are very, very knowledgeable and incredibly helpful. Also, Bug Guide. There's a lot of people who are helpful there, but Bill Dean is considered the godfather. He apparently had been living in England as a mail carrier there, and became the Great Britain's expert on flower flies, then moved to Canada and became North America's most important identifier of flower flies. Also, we worked on the Blue Ridge Syrphid project, and the project leader, Paul Super, really was helpful to us on learning and getting more familiar with the different species. Well, that's it. Do you have questions?
I have two questions, Bruce. The fantastic photos, by the way, just fantastic. My two questions are, number one, do you have to net these and or kill them and or have close-up photos for identification? I mean, can you just look at, an evening primrose with a little flower fly on it and say, oh, that's a such and such? Or do you have to really get into the nitty-gritty to identify them?
That's a great question, and the answer is, you could buy the guide and see if you could work from the guide, but I really think you have to have the picture or the dead insect in front of you to do the ID, because I mean, most of these were half inch or so when they're flying around.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like bird
they're not
watching,
sitting still
right?
that much either. So
yeah, I mean, it's not like bird watching, right?
It's not, no.
No, okay. I was
Although,
curious.
after you get familiar with things, it's kind of like bird watching in the sense that once you get really familiar with things, it gets a lot easier to do
Right.
some of this. So, a lot of those ones I told you, they told us to quit collecting. Yeah, we can, even though they're a 1/4 inch, we can tell which ones they are because they're so ubiquitous. We see them so often.
Okay,
And
thank
something
you.
like the really big ones too can be easy to ID because they're so big and they look
Right.
specifically like a specific wasp or bee.
Okay, my other question is that you mentioned quite a number of times about the larvae, the specific flies and what their larvae were eating. But I mean, as terms of their life cycle, are they flower flies because they're collecting pollen, not nectar, and they're using the pollen to provision is it like a mason bee that's laying an egg with provisioning it with pollen? Is that what's going on?
No, none of the larvae of any of these flies are fed by the adult. All of them, that's what I was saying, that in the first subfamily, all of them, as far as we know, are predatory. The larvae are, in ant nests, eating the eggs and larvae of the ants. So that's their food. The Surfini and the Pipzini are primarily aphid eaters. They might, get a little bit out of that, but in general, they're eating soft-bodied insects like aphids.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's their food. All of them.
So the adults, the flower flies themselves that are attending flowers, they're just getting pollen or nectar.
what a great question. Nectar, as far as I know, but it may also be
so
pollen. But their
okay,
mouth
so the
parts are
pollen
not.
is incidental, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a butterfly, which I might add is not a particularly effective pollinator. But it's sucking up nectar there at the flower, and
Okay.
incidentally has pollen.
Okay, so it's getting nectar. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
What is the
Fantastic
function of the
presentation.
arista?
So I'm sorry, question about the arista?
What is the function of it? Does it have a function?
Okay, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I was just curious.
well, it's above my pay grade. Apparently, I hadn't thought of asking.
It just looks cool.
It just looks cool.
Bruce, I have a question,
You can stop
Bruce.
sharing. Yeah, stop sharing, Bruce. That way we can see everybody.
Oh,
if you don't
well,
mind. That way
So,
we can
Bruce,
see you.
let's figure out
or can you hear me?
how do
out
I
there?
stop? I figured out how to stop sharing. No, that
Go
didn't
under.
work.
There's
Okay,
the.
there we go. I
Yeah,
found it.
here we go.
It
Thanks.
showed up.
Okay, can I ask a question now?
Absolutely.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So for those of us who are really trying to, assist in habitat gardening, so did you notice that there are certain plants that are really important to these flower flies?
So it's mentioned in the book that different groups or different species are going to be attracted to different things. But it's kind of like, so, and that's a little harder for me to answer because I haven't really studied that part that much.
Okay.
But
Well,
I know,
they say
they
that
do
small
mention
flowers, small flies, small flowers. Did you notice that many of these insects were on small flowered plants, the little flowering plants? Did you notice
well,
that?
even that very small, even some very small flies like will be on larger flowers. So I don't know that necessarily, I've noticed that more with butterflies, maybe because I was more sensitive to it. That certain kinds of flowers, only one or two of the big swallowtails would be able to nectar on because they're just too far to get down there to the nectar. So the other species ignore it.
How do they overwinter? Have you discovered that at all or know about that?
Yeah, they're all going to overwinter in the egg or larva stages. The larvae are typically going to be in some protected area, and the eggs as well.
In the ground or in the plant stem, or are these
Yeah, so the larvae, they're the ones that are the filter feeders are going to either be in water or in tree sap or rot holes in trees, that kind of thing. They're filter feeders.
Oh, okay.
And if they're overwintering as eggs, they may be convenient to that. So when they hatch out, it'll be appropriate timing.
So leaving litter
and the right
beneath
habitat.
trees would be suitable habitat for that to happen, possibly.
Well, there's so many different possibilities. So some of them are compost feeders, and
okay, all right,
others
okay.
So there's all these different places where they could be, depending on the species and what their larval foods are.
Thank you. No easy answer. I get it. Thank you.
I guess that's it for the questions. Thank you so much, Bruce. As usual,
you're welcome.
photography is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go on to the rest of our meeting today. One thing I wanted to mention, we have Hannah Wetzel with us today. She was the newest interpreter at Claytor Lake State Park, but she's recently been promoted to volunteer coordinator. And we're looking forward to working with her this season, and she would like to say a few words to us.
Hi, everyone. Nice meeting you all. I know I've met some of you guys before as park naturalists. Just some things I want to say. I have a newsletter that I'm starting to make that I'll send out probably in the next couple of days. And I'm trying to implement volunteer monthly work days. So also be on the lookout for that. So yeah.
Hey, didn't I pull a chair out of the lake with you?
Yes, that's me.
Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
Looking forward to working with you.
Yep.
That's fun. Okay, Judy, I think you had some things to say about vernal pool and frog watch training.
Yep, I'm supposed to do the project of the month. The vernal pool training actually happened Thursday, but we did make a video of it. So if you're interested in the vernal pools are pools that fill up in the wintertime. They're not connected to any other water source. So there's animals that live there that not live there, but reproduce there and nowhere else. And so one of the projects that you could do for, I think it's DWR, is monitor vernal pools. Again, we had the main training Thursday night, but there's a recording. You also have to do a field trip to do it. And right now, there's no point in monitoring the vernal pools. So contact me or Brenda Graff or Chris Sokol. She's overseeing the whole thing. Brenda and I are just trainers. If you're interested in the vernal pool training, coming up this Thursday, we have Frog Watch. There is something magical about going out and listening to the frogs and knowing what you're hearing out there. So that training is this coming Thursday at 7:00. You can go into Better Impact and sign up, and we'll get you a link. And that also has a field trip involved, and you got to learn 13 frog calls. But it's really cool. So if you're interested, let us know.
Field trips are weather dependent.
Yeah, the field trips for both vernal pools and Frog Watch are weather dependent.
Well, I have,
calling.
I
There's
have
no
to
point in
object. I have to object to you saying you're just trainers. You guys are doing the hard part. That you're doing the training and you're doing the field trips. I'm just doing the administrative stuff for the vernal pools.
Yeah, but we're having a good time.
Oh, I know you're having a good time, but you said just trainers, and I just have to object to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Objection sustained.
Chris, can I mention something about another project?
Sure.
Yeah. I think you all will get an email this week, you know, that bi-monthly email that you get from the state is going to mention this gray box project. Up till now, it's been a wildlife mapping project where they've been getting private property to put camera traps out looking for gray wolves to do a population study in Virginia. There's a new phase of the project. They have a lot of data now, and there's artificial intelligence that's identifying what they're seeing on the videos, but they want eyes on it to verify it. So it's a good cold weather project that you can do at your computer, looking at camera trap video and doing some verification. And you're going to get an email from the state about how to get involved with it with a link. It's a Virginia Tech researcher from the Department of Conservation and Wildlife Management. So if you're interested in it, go for it. We will have an activity on Better Impact for you to log your hours. It's not up there yet, but it will be in the next week or two. So go for it when you get that email, and it gives you all the information. It's a new project that you can get involved in.
So that
And To add to that, our April meeting, we have the carnivore people who are doing that research as our presenters for the chapter meeting in April. It's Maureen and her research person. I don't have their names on the ticket. We had Maureen talk about the bear project.
Isn't it Marcella Kelly?
Yes, it
Well,
is.
Marcella Kelly and her grad student doing the
Victoria.
boxing is Victoria Monette or
Yes, that's right.
Monette. I don't know her first name. V Monette.
But they are
Okay.
our speakers for the chapter meeting in April.
Right.
So
Well, this is a good week to do something inside on your computer.
So that email will be coming to everyone?
Yes, it comes from the state.
Okay.
I have gray fox on my trail cams and I've never known what to do with the info. So that's cool.
Okay. Well, now you know.
Yeah, I do. I'll
Okay.
follow up.
Before we get to the last item, does anyone else have anything that they would like to say?
I would
We
just
need
say
to have
anybody who wants to submit camera data, their own camera data, or have Victoria put cameras on there. I tried to get them in my yard, but I have fences and I didn't qualify, sadly. But I've been sending her other people who have gray foxes. So if you do have them, Judy, I'll send you her email. Okay.
I had a question for Hannah Wetzel. What is the procedure for getting permission to do projects in at Claytor Lake or in the state park system?
That I'm not 100% sure on, but if you wanted to send me an email, I will be in the office tomorrow where my supervisor would definitely know that. So just shoot me an email and I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks, Hannah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw Barbara flash on. Remember, we want to talk about our lost member.
Yes,
Right.
I was getting to that. Yes.
Okay, so that was the last item on the agenda. I wasn't sure. Yeah, many of you know that Butch Kelly died last week, and I wanted to just say a few words about him because he was really a key member in our organization for many years. And I first met Butch in 2006, which was the first year of the Master Naturalist course in the New River Valley. And it was also the first year that most of the courses around Virginia began. So he's been a Master Naturalist about as long as anybody in Virginia could have been. And he was the first president of our chapter and was president 2 terms, 4 years. And he was just gung-ho from the get-go. He already came into the chapter being a really good naturalist. He was a member of the Roanoke Bird Club, the Roanoke Native Plant Clubs, and he was a science teacher. So he had a lot under his belt before he got involved. But once he was in the chapter, he was really dedicated to volunteering around our area. One of the first projects our club did was initiated by him, and it was trying to get the invasive species out of Falls Ridge. Excuse me. And if you haven't been there, you may not know, but there's a lot of tree of heaven in that area. And we worked, a lot of us, quite hard for several years working on that. And Butch was the leader. He did what it took to be certified to use a chainsaw there with the Nature Conservancy. And he was certified to use herbicides. So he was out there cutting big old ailanthus trees, and we were painting the stumps. And there was a lot of times that the members of our group were doubtful that we were doing much good or that we could ever get a handle on it, but Butch persevered and urged us on, and I think we really did make a difference. I know there's still invasive species, but I do think he kind of convinced us that there is possibility in doing that. I think the Falls Ridge Trail was a real important piece of land for Butch, and he continued to volunteer there long after I was no longer volunteering there. I think up until right before he died, he was scheduling the trail stewards, mowing the grass, and working out there himself. So he really left an impression there. Another thing that was one of his passions was native wildflowers. And I would imagine there's a lot of us in our club that have gone on a hike with Butch. He he did hikes all over the New River Valley, all over Roanoke Valley, Craig County. Just he knew all those trails, all those plants. There were very few wildflowers that could really stump Butch. And I think another passion of his, maybe is his biggest passion, was just in educating people about the natural environment. He was a science teacher, but in his working life, and he also worked as a interpreter or a naturalist along the Blue Ridge Parkway. And once he retired, he was just a really devoted volunteer and put in lots of hours and was funny and energetic and just always, he just left a good impression on everyone he knew. And I think he really left a good impression on the local environment too. And so he's going to really be missed. And I think it's going to take a lot of us to fill his shoes. So I hope I feel lucky. I think you should feel lucky if you got to know Butch.
Thanks,
Hear,
Barb.
hear to that.
Thank you. I have one more item. Bruce wanted to say something about the bog turtle habitat work that we've been doing. Bruce?
Yes. So this year's bog turtle work, there may be additional bog turtle work because I've offered assistance. I don't know how many of you will be available for the natural heritage people have places in Floyd County. But there's a place in Patrick County where we've been doing for the last few years, we've been doing habitat restoration work. The problem is bog turtles need places without a lot of trees, and the alders just keep growing back in there. We have to keep cutting and cutting every year to make the habitat usable for the bog turtles. But that's an endangered species in Virginia. They're really adorable. We don't usually get to see them. Actually, we can't hope we don't see them because, that it could be a problem if we're stomping through their habitat and they're present there. So we try to get it before they're really busy. And we're going to be going down there on April 11th with a rain date of April 18th. And I hope some of you may be able to volunteer for that work. It's pretty heavy physical work in that you're, wearing knee boots or waders in a bog, and you're trying to cut, they're not big trees, but you're trying to cut a lot of wood and haul it over to piles. So it's very, very strenuous. It's not for everybody, but if you can participate, it's great. And if you are a certified chainsaw operator, we need you even more. So please consider it. We do use other kinds of brush clearing equipment, and there's places where it's not all alders. There's other things that need to be whacked too. But please consider this as an activity, and you can contact me at any time about it. Thanks.
Thank you. I have to say, after a day of using loppers for that project, I am working on getting certified to use a chainsaw.
And where are you getting certified?
I'm working on it. I have a lead, but I haven't found somebody who's willing to take me through the whole course.
Chris, can I put in one more plug?
Sure.
Here. I will be sending Tanya information so it can go in the weekly email, but I just want to start putting in plugs for the Bluebird Trails at the high school, the middle school, and Price's Fork Elementary, because We need volunteers to come out once a week on the weekend. And if you have not done it before, we'll have a Bluebird weekend kickoff. Currently, I believe it's going to be March 22nd, which is a Saturday, with the rain date of Sunday, the 23rd. And I'm going to be away shortly before that, so I wanted to get the word out now, but I'll be asking Tanya to promote it in the weekly mail. But if you've never done it before, it's a lot of fun. I'll tell you, there's nothing like looking in a bluebird box and seeing a nest for the first time, or eggs or chicks. It's very interesting and exciting. So if you haven't done bluebirds before, you should come out to the Bluebird kickoff, because you learn what you're looking for when you open the box, and we use an app to collect our data, so you'll learn about that. And if you've done it before and got discouraged because it was hard to get to the boxes. I don't know if Pete's agreed to do the mowing, but last year he did a lot of mowing for us, and it made it much, much, much easier to get to the boxes and walk the trail. So it's a good way to get out on the weekend and help with the bluebirds. So I'm just putting in a plug now. Keep it in mind for the
Can you
spring
tell me
and
that
summer.
date again? What was that date?
March 22nd is the proposed date. I haven't picked a time yet, but closer to the time, we'll look at the weather and see how. It'll probably be something like 11 in the morning or noon, and we'll stand in front of a box, look at how you look in the box, what you're looking for, and how you record the data. So, and then we might, if you've never been to the Bluebird Trail before, we'll take you around and show you where the boxes are. Thanks.
Thank you.
No, and Chris, I hate to keep coming back to old things, but thinking about Butch, because I've known Butch for a long time, not well, but over the years as a naturalist. And one of the things that I learned from him, well, first the Bentley Orchid on the Potts Rail Trail, which was very exciting. But anyway, he pointed out in one of our, and I think it was for Master Naturalists, but we went and we walked around in the boggy area that's off of the road that goes to the right for the roundleaf sundew. And
yes, to the Glen Alton.
Yeah, on the way to Glen Alton. It's not that it's right on the road before you get to and I remember him saying, thinking of alders. It made me think when you mentioned that the alders were taking over that bog. And that's been that's been 6 or 7 years ago that I remember doing that. And I just wonder if anyone's heard anything else about that piece of property and what's going on with that. Does anyone know? I think maybe the biological station at Mountain Lake may know. They may have their own patch of the roundleaf sundew, but they're like an inch across and they're flat, kind of a rosette, and they're a carnivorous plant. And that's, I think, our only carnivorous plant here, I think. So just throwing that out because it crossed my mind thinking of Butch. I guess that's no one else has looked at them.
I haven't looked up there recently, but I know I went there with him and I know exactly where it is. So next time I'm up that way in the spring, I'll start looking.
Yeah, and maybe we could think about who owns that property and what's it all about and look at controlling the alders there, because that's what's taking over that boggy area are the alders. Anyway,
if you're planning on doing that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that Meetup would be good for. If
yes, it would.
About going exploring, just, like Sandy, you say you know where it is. If you posted that on Meetup, maybe people could catch up with you and you could all go out there.
Yeah. Chris, thanks for bringing that up. This is Mara. I just want to mention we're still hoping to get more people onto Meetup. And as we go forward into the spring and have more things going on, we'll be posting more get-togethers, both casual and group-wide. And I just want everybody to sign up for it. Christy and I were talking the other day about maybe putting together either a video or a sort of how-to, because apparently a few people have been having trouble signing on and figuring out what to do, like once they get a Meetup account, how to find our group. So I'm going to be putting some more information out about that soon. And yes, anybody who's organizing and wants to organize a get together, let me know and I'll make it so you can put it on Meetup. I think all the board members already are able to, but I'll check on that. But just wanted to let you know, we're still going to be working with that. And I think it's going to really make a difference and make it easier for us to organize all of the many things that we do. So sign up for it if you haven't already.
A meetup would be good for any kind of casual, if you're just thinking about going on a hike or something like that, checking out a spot, like I'm gonna have to be looking for vernal pools. I've got coordinates to find vernal pools that were reported like 4, 5, 6 years ago that no one has seen. And all I have are coordinates. And that kind of thing is something I could possibly use Meetup for and just say, hey, I'm going to go look for these. Does anybody want to go with me? Not required, but Meetup would be good for casual kinds of things. If you just want to go on a hike and have somebody go with you, you can use Meetup.
And it's also really good if we've got things that we're doing that are weather dependent, because once you've signed up, then whoever is organizing it can very easily say, oh, look, it's raining, let's reschedule for the next day. So it's a really good way to kind of keep in touch and with, things that are changing due to, last minute things like the weather. So
if you're running into problems signing up for it or using it, please contact Mara, because this would be a really good tool for us if we could get everybody involved in it.
Another example, the Wiser Observatory that is constantly advertised by Tanya on Friday nights down in Dublin. I mean, that's something that you only have a couple days notice, that if it's a clear sky, then that would be a good activity to go down and check it out, whatever. But great example, I think.
Yes, thank you. Unless anybody has any other topics that you'd like to share, I think we're done for the evening. I thank everybody for participating. This has been great, a great turnout.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. That was so good.
Good night, everybody.
Really enjoyed it.
Night.
Thanks.